Have you ever met someone and felt an immediate, undeniable pull? That feeling like you've known them forever, or maybe that meeting them was somehow inevitable, like destined.
Oh, absolutely, that sense of destiny.
For so long, we've wrapped love in this really beautiful, mysterious aura. Something outside the everyday, governed by fate or cosmic chance, completely beyond the cold logic of science.
It feels like magic, doesn't it?
Totally.
And that powerful feeling, that sense of just inexplicable connection, well, it's inspired art, poetry, philosophy for literally millennia. We talk about soulmates, finding the one.
Right, often framing it as this purely non-rational thing.
Exactly.
And that narrative is, it's incredibly compelling. But what if that feeling of destiny, that deep connection, isn't only about fate? What if underneath all the poetry, there's this, fascinating layer that science is just starting to unpack?
That is precisely the idea we're digging into today. We've been looking at some really thought-provoking stuff from the book Love's Genome Compass by Dr. Lee Minsup. And he takes this, well, pretty unique approach, looking at all sorts of human experiences, including love, through the lens of our genes and how they interact with, everything around us.
Right. So the core question from Dr. Lee's work, the one we're tackling in this deep dive, it's kind of profound, isn't it? Is love just a random roll of the dice, or could it be maybe just partly a genetic choice, something written into our code?
It definitely challenges our usual romantic ideas. The source material lays out some honestly surprising scientific findings, especially research from the last, say, 20 years or so.
Uh-huh.
And it suggests a real measurable link between our genes and the choices we make, the attractions we feel, even the bonds we form in dating and marriage.
So the idea is that who we feel drawn to, who we connect with deeply, maybe even who we end up building stable, long-term relationships with. It might not just be about personality or upbringing or sheer luck.
Exactly. It could also be subtly, modulated by our DNA. Now, Dr. Lee's work, at least in these excerpts, isn't trying to reduce love just to biology. It's more about showing this intricate dance between factors.
Okay.
So our mission here is really to unpack these specific findings from the source to see how science is adding these, well, pretty unexpected layers to how we understand attraction and connection.
Showing that complex mix of biology, experience, and choice.
Precisely. It's where it all meets.
Okay, let's get into it then. We usually start with that comforting idea, right? Love is fate, this mysterious force. It feels totally random when we meet someone special.
Right. That narrative is, well, it's everywhere in our culture. But the scientific view, Dr. Lee explores, is that, okay, while the feeling might seem coincidental,
Yeah?
the underlying attraction, the potential for connection, it might be influenced by things we're not consciously aware of. And specifically, to some extent, by our genes.
And the source makes it clear this isn't just like a wild guess. There's actual research over the past couple of decades.
Oh yeah, specific research looking into this connection, how our genetic profiles might link to partner selection, from those first dates all the way to, marriage.
But it's not saying my genes picked up my spouse, right? It's not like genetic destiny.
No, definitely not genetic determinism. That's a key point.
Yeah.
It's more that genes might modulate things, our preferences, how we react to people, maybe even our capacity for bonding. They're working sort of beneath the surface, alongside all the other stuff we usually think about.
Like psychology, environment, all that.
Exactly. All those conscious factors, too.
Okay, so if our genes are maybe whispering suggestions, where does the source point first? What's the first bit of concrete evidence for these genetic threads in love?
Well, one of the best-known examples, and maybe one of the most surprising that the source talks about, involves genes linked to our immune system.
Immune system.
Yeah, the MHC genes, major histocompatibility complex.
MHC. Okay, that sounds super medical, like zero romance. What exactly are MHC genes?
So think of them as really fundamental for your immune system. They help it tell the difference between you and not your, viruses or bacteria.
Okay.
They're crucial for recognizing and fighting off invaders. They help identify markers on cells. Very important stuff for staying healthy.
Vital for fighting colds, sure. But how on earth does my immune system connect to who I might find, attractive?
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. It's an incredible example of how evolution can sneak into totally unexpected parts of our lives.
Uh-huh.
Studies cited in the source, done on animals, and compellingly on us humans, show we tend to prefer partners with MHC genes that are different from our own.
Wait, different? So my immune system genes are somehow checking out someone else's immune system genes. What's the logic? Why different?
The source explains there's a really clear evolutionary reason. When parents have diverse immune genes, different MHC types, their kids inherit a wider range of them.
Right.
And this genetic diversity in the child's immune system makes them better able to fight off more kinds of diseases. It boosts their survival chances.
So it's like a survival instinct playing out in attraction. We're subconsciously looking for a genetic partner whose genes will give our potential kids the best immune system upgrade.
That's the biological rationale, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild to think about it that way.
It really is. And the source mentions a famous study that showed this in people, right? The sweaty T-shirt experiment from Switzerland.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the classic one back in 1995. A perfect illustration. Basically, they had male volunteers wear the same T-shirt for 2 nights. No deodorant or anything scented.
Okay. Letting their natural scent soak in.
Exactly. Their scent influenced by their unique MHC profile. Then, female participants who weren't on hormonal contraceptives, because that can mess with smell perception.
Right.
They
Okay.
were asked to smell these worn T-shirts, which were put in special boxes, and rate how pleasant or sexually attractive the smell was. And the researchers knew the MHC profiles of all the men.
And the results. Did they just like guys who, I don't know, smelled cleaner?
The results were striking. They lined up perfectly with the evolutionary idea. Women consistently rated the smell of T-shirts from men whose MHC genes were the most different from their own as being, well, significantly more pleasant and attractive.
Wow. And the ones who were similar.
Often rated less pleasant, sometimes even described as smelling like sickly sweet or,
Yeah.
well, other unpleasant things.
Okay, so that intuitive feeling, like when you're just drawn to someone's natural scent, that weird chemistry thing, it might not just be random preference. It could actually be this deep, instinctive biological drive for genetic diversity working through our noses.
That's the implication.
Right.
This simple, primal scent smell could be directly linked to this fundamental need for survival and passing on healthy genes.
It just adds a whole new layer to the scent of attraction. Okay, so let's unpack that. It's not the only thing, obviously.
So definitely not the only factor in attraction. But it's a powerful demonstration of how our biology, in ways we're totally unaware of consciously, might be giving us these initial nudges toward certain people. It's these subconscious hard at work in love.
Incredible. So MHC, influencing that first spark through scent, may be tied to immune compatibility. What other genetic threads does the source, does Dr. Lee, explore? What else influences love?
So the source then moves on to genes related to a really key neurotransmitter. You've probably heard of it, oxytocin, often called the love hormone or the bonding hormone.
Ah, oxytocin. Yeah, the cuddle chemical, trust, all that.
Exactly that. According to Dr. Lee's work in the source, oxytocin is crucial, not just for parents and babies bonding, but also for strengthening attachment between romantic partners, boosting trust, fostering that feeling of intimacy.
So it helps turn that initial attraction into something more stable.
It seemed to play a big role in that transition, yeah,
Yeah.
building that committed relationship.
And there's a specific gene connected to how our bodies actually use oxytocin.
Yes, it's the oxytocin receptor gene, often shortened to OXTR. This gene basically holds the instructions for building the receptors. Think of them like docking stations or locks on our cells in the brain and body. Oxytocin is the key that fits in and triggers the response.
Okay, so the receptor is key.
Right. And the research discussed in the source shows that variations, different versions of this OXTR gene, are linked to individual differences in things like how trusting we are, our levels of empathy, even how intensely we feel intimacy and form close bonds.
So hang on. Depending on which version of the OXTR gene I have, I might just naturally be more trusting or feel closeness more deeply than someone else.
That's what the research cited suggests, yeah. The source points to findings that people with certain OXTR variations seem to build trust more easily, report feeling more empathy, and might be more likely to maintain those stable, long-term relationships.
Compared to people with other variations?
Compared to those with other variations, exactly. It hints at a potential biological underpinning for some of our inherent social tendencies.
That's really fascinating because it suggests that, how easily someone forms deep connections. Or maybe why someone else tends to keep people at arm's length or struggles with trust. It might not only be about their past experiences or their personality.
Right. There could be this subtle genetic predisposition influencing how their brain and body actually process this vital bonding hormone.
It gives a biological angle on why some people seem naturally more open to deep emotional connection, while others maybe find it harder to let their guard down.
Yeah, suggesting it's not just about wanting to, but maybe also about the biological wiring involved.
Powerful stuff. Okay, so we've got MHC potentially nudging initial attraction via scent and immunity, and OXTR influencing our capacity for deep bonding and trust. What's the third gene the source brings into this love equation?
The third example discussed is DRD4. That's a type of dopamine receptor gene.
Dopamine, all right. Pleasure, reward, motivation. What's special about DRD4?
Well, the DRD4 gene is particularly known for its link to things like novelty-seeking, sensation-seeking, basically a drive to explore new things, new environments. Different versions of the gene are linked to different levels of these traits.
Okay, a novelty-seeking gene. How does that connect to love and relationships? Seems a bit different.
Well, according to the source, variations in DRD4 might actually influence our relationship styles.
How so?
People with certain variants might have a stronger drive for novelty within their dating lives or relationships. This could mean they really enjoy meeting new people, maybe prefer more adventurous or exciting dates, or potentially they might feel bored more easily in relationships that settle into a comfortable routine.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
So this could offer a kind of biological insight into why some people are really happy with stability and predictability in a relationship, while others seem to always crave excitement, change, maybe even move from one relationship to another more often.
Exactly. The source suggests that this difference, prioritizing stability versus seeking novelty, might not just be personality or learned behavior. It could be partly tied to these subtle differences in their dopamine systems, affecting their basic appetite for newness in social and romantic situations.
Wow. Okay, so putting these together. MHC for attraction, OXTR for bonding, DRD4 for novelty seeking. It really feels like our genes are sketching out some basic tendencies for us when it comes to love. Which brings us to that huge question, the one Dr. Lee's work really makes you ask.
The big one.
Yeah. Does this mean my genes decided who I fall for? Or how I even do relationships? Do we actually get a say in any of this?
It's absolutely the critical question, and the source tackles it head on. Dr. Lee gives a very nuanced answer. He says, partially yes.
Partially, yes. That still sounds a bit like we're programmed, a bit deterministic.
Right, but here's where it gets really interesting, and it fits Dr. Lee's bigger picture about how factors interact. Genes might influence those basic tendencies. Our emotional gut reactions may be nudging us towards certain attractions or affecting how easily we bond or how much novelty we crave.
But
And this is crucial, humans are unique because we can adjust. We can modify, we can even overcome these instinctive biological leanings.
how do we do that? How do we manage these genetic whispers?
Through everything else Dr. Lee emphasizes, our environment, all our life experiences from childhood right up to yesterday, the social values, the cultural norms we absorb, and really importantly, our conscious thought and our free will,
So it's an interaction.
a constant interaction.
Hmm.
This is also where epigenetics fits in subtly. The idea that our experiences can actually change how our genes are expressed. The genes give us a blueprint, maybe, but experience and choice shape the building.
So the analogy from the source, genes might prepare the stage for love, build the set.
Exactly. That's the beautiful analogy used. Genes might set the stage, maybe influence the lighting, the scenery, perhaps even who initially catches our eye in the casting call, who we feel a basic resonance with.
But we write the play.
We are the playwrights, the directors, the actors. We write the story of our love through the choices we make, how we react, the effort we put in, the things we learn along the way.
That's a really vital distinction. It's not genetic determinism, it's genetic influence interacting with our own agency.
Absolutely. Dr. Lee is very clear in the source material. Love is not just a product of genes. He really hammers home the impact of all those other things. Family dynamics growing up, lessons from friendships, first loves, cultural ideas about relationships.
And our own conscious decisions.
And most powerfully, our own conscious decisions about who we choose, what we value, how we decide to act in that relationship.
So the genes give us an initial sketch, maybe suggest some possibilities?
Yes, they provide a sketch, maybe set some baselines, some sensitivities or predispositions, but it's our free will, our unique life story, our emotions, our values. That's what adds the vibrant color, the texture, the depth, the actual narrative to that sketch.
We're not just puppets of our DNA.
Not at all. We're active participants, using awareness and choice to navigate these biological currents.
Okay, so this whole scientific perspective, looking at the biology behind attraction and bonding, some people might worry it kind of spoils the magic, reduces love to just a few chemicals and genes. Does science take the romance out of it?
Dr. Lee addresses that exact concern in the source, and his answer is basically a firm no. He argues science doesn't aim to strip away the magic. Actually, quite the opposite.
Okay, so what does it aim to do?
Instead, science, through studies like the ones we've talked about, just gives us a deeper window into the mystery. It doesn't explain away the feeling itself, but helps us understand the incredibly intricate biological architecture that supports it.
So it adds complexity, not reduces it.
Exactly. It adds wonder, really.
How does knowing about the genes help us understand the mystery better?
Well, by recognizing these biological influences like understanding why that instant pull via scent might happen, or why some people bond more easily, or why novelty seeking varies, it helps us grasp more precisely why we experience love in all its different facets,
Yeah.
why certain people feel uniquely special, why that initial spark feels so magical. Maybe because it taps into something biologically profound that served our species for ages.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, love isn't just one simple thing. It's this amazingly complex interplay between different levels of being human.
Precisely. It really shows that beautiful, complicated intersection where deep emotion meets fundamental biology, where instinct meets intellect and choice. Dr. Lee's work presents love as this truly sophisticated phenomenon shaped by evolution, genes, life experience, and our own agency.
So it's a scientific view that actually highlights how extraordinary love is.
Exactly. Far from spoiling the romance,
Yeah.
it underscores the sheer complexity and depth of what it means to love and be loved.
Okay, so let's pull this together from what we've unpacked from Love's Genome Compass.
Yeah.
We've seen how specific genes, like MHC, might play a role in that initial subconscious attraction, maybe through scent.
Uh-huh.
How OXTR genes could influence our ability to form deep bonds, to trust,
Right.
and how DRD4 genes might relate to how much novelty or stability we seek in relationships, all potentially setting a kind of biological stage.
Yeah, setting a stage, influencing tendencies. But it's so crucial, as Dr. Lee really stresses, to remember the balance. Genes are fascinating, they're influential, but they are absolutely only part of the picture.
They're predispositions, not destiny.
Exactly, they're not your destination.
The love we actually choose to build, the lessons we learn, the effort we consciously put into nurturing a connection, the bonds we decide to protect, that's where our human agency really shines.
That, the source argues pretty powerfully, is the real unfolding story of love. It's a story that no single gene or even collection of genes can write all by itself.
Dr. Lee Minsup leaves us with this really provocative thought, doesn't he? One that kind of reframes everything.
He does. It makes you look at love from a completely different, almost startling angle. He says love is not just a simple emotion, but the most sophisticated biological strategy invented by genes to pass on to the next generation.
The most sophisticated biological strategy. Wow, that's powerful, especially when you hold it alongside the romance of it all. Really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does this scientific perspective, seeing love not just as feeling or fate, but also as this deep biological strategy interacting with your choices, how does that change how you think about falling in love or looking for a partner or even nurturing the relationships you already have?